Admiral Kethmura walked slowly around the massive war table. His 6 arms moved as he pointed at the floating screens above them. The room was dark, except for the blue light from the displays. 50 military leaders from different planets sat watching him. "Look at this," Kethmura said. His voice was deep and harsh. "Another report about humans, the ghost people who don't exist." He touched one of the screens. Pictures appeared, showing different creatures. Some were tall, some short. Some had dark skin, others light. Some had strange markings on their bodies. See, every report describes them differently. One says they have 4 arms. Another says 2. One claims they breathe water. Another says they need air like us. Kethmura's mandibles clicked together, making a sharp sound. "It's all lies, Genetto Vexter." An old warrior with scars across his face stood up. "But Admiral, we have a prisoner. He claims to be human." Kethmura turned to look at the corner of the room. There sat a being in metal chains. He looked ordinary. 2 arms, 2 legs, brown hair, dark eyes. Nothing special about him at all. "Captain Hyenwu," Kethmura read from a datapad. "Found floating in space after we destroyed his ship. Claims to be from something called Earth." The prisoner looked up. His face was calm. Too calm for someone who was about to die. "I am Captain Hyenwu," the being said. His voice was quiet but clear. "I come from the 3rd planet in the Sol system." The council members whispered to each other. Some looked worried. Others seemed angry. Kethmura walked over to the prisoner. "Our scouts went to your so-called Sol system. They found nothing. Empty space. A few dead rocks around a dying star." Hyenwu smiled slightly. "Your scouts saw what we wanted them to see. Impossible." Kethmura's 4 eyes glowed red with anger. "Our technology is the best in the galaxy. We see everything." "No," Hyenwu said softly. "You see what you expect to see. You look for big things, loud things, things that want to be found." Commander Zelthek, a young officer, stood up. "Admiral, what if he's telling the truth? What if humans are real?" The room went quiet. Everyone stared at the commander. Kethmura's face grew dark. "Real," Kethmura laughed. The sound echoed off the metal walls. "For 300 years, we've heard stories about humans. They help other species fight us. They have ships that appear from nowhere. They use weapons we don't understand." He turned back to Hyenwu. "But no one has ever brought us proof. No human bodies, no human ships, no human cities, nothing. Because we don't want to be found," Hyenwu said. "Not yet." General Vex stepped forward. "Prisoner, our records show 47 different species have claimed to meet humans. All described you differently. How do you explain that?" Hyenwu looked around the room. His eyes met each council member's gaze. "Because you only see what we let you see. When we meet other species, we appear as what they expect." "What makes them comfortable? Shapeshifters?" asked Commander Zelthek. "No," Hyenwu replied. "We just understand how minds work, how fear works, how hope works." The Admiral slammed his fist on the table. "Enough games. You're just another rebel trying to slow our expansion. Our armies are already moving toward your fake homeworld." Hyenwu's expression changed. For the first time, he looked sad. "We sent you 3 messages, Admiral. 3 offers of peace. 3 chances to avoid what's coming." "What's coming?" Kethmura leaned down until his face was close to the prisoner's. "What could possibly threaten the hegemony? We control half the galaxy." "You control half the galaxy you can see," Hyenwu corrected. "But there's so much you can't see, so much you refuse to see." The screens around the room began showing star maps. Red dots marked hegemony-controlled systems. There were thousands of them. "Look at your great empire," Hyenwu said. "See how it grows. See how it spreads. But look closer, Admiral. Look at the empty spaces between your worlds. Kethmora stared at the map. There were indeed empty spaces. Systems his scouts had reported as lifeless or uninhabitable. Those aren't empty, Hyanwu whispered. They're full of life, full of species you thought you destroyed, full of civilizations you thought you conquered. Impossible, breathed General Vexstar. We offered them sanctuary, Hyanwu continued. When you came to destroy them, we gave them a choice. Fight and die, or disappear, and live. The room was silent, except for the humming of machines. Every council member stared at the star map with new eyes. You're lying, Kethmora said, but his voice wasn't as strong as before. Hyanwu stood up slowly. His chains made soft clinking. Sounds, Admiral. I'm going to tell you something important. When your fleet reaches Earth, you won't be invading us. You'll be accepting our invitation. What invitation? To finally meet us. The real us. And to meet everyone else you thought was gone forever. Kethmora ordered the guards to take the prisoner away. As they dragged Hyanwu toward the door, he called back one last time. Tell your families you love them, Admiral. After today, some of you won't return home. The council laughed, but their laughter sounded forced, worried, and Admiral Kethmora noticed something that made his blood run cold. The human prisoner hadn't been afraid. Not even a little bit. The stars around the Sol system looked different. Then Scout Commander Thraxiel remembered from the old maps. His fleet of 50 warships had just finished their jump through hyperspace. The engines were still cooling down when the alarms started screaming. What's happening? Thraxiel demanded from his command chair. His 4 eyes focused on the main screen, showing the third planet from the star. Sir, his sensor officer called out. I'm reading massive structures around the planet. They weren't in our database. Thraxiel stood up and walked to the sensor station. What he saw made his stomach drop. Huge metal rings surrounded the blue and green planet. Each ring was bigger than most space stations he had ever seen. They spun slowly, catching light from the star. How many? He asked. 17 major orbital platforms, sir, and ... Sir, there are more contacts appearing. On the screen, small dots began showing up. They came from what looked like empty space, near asteroids and moons. The dots moved toward his fleet in perfect formation. Ships, Thraxiel whispered. How many ships? 200 so far, sir. More appearing every second. The communication officer turned around. Sir, we're getting a transmission on standard galactic frequency. Put it on screen. A face appeared on the main display. It was clearly one of the humans from the prisoner's description. Female, with black hair and brown eyes. She wore a simple blue uniform with small metal badges on the collar. This is Commander Min Young of the Earth's Defense Force, she said. Her voice was calm and professional. Please state your intentions in soul space. Thraxiel stepped forward. His chest puffed out with pride. I am Scout Commander Thraxiel of the Hegemony. By order of Admiral Kethmora, you will surrender immediately or face total extinction. The human woman on the screen looked sad. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. We hoped it wouldn't come to this. You have 30 seconds to reverse course and leave this system. Thraxiel laughed. The sound echoed through his ship's bridge. You dare threaten the mighty hegemony? Look around you, primitive. You're outnumbered 50 to 1. Commander Minyoung nodded slowly. Yes, we noticed. 20 seconds. Sir, his weapons officer called out. Should we prepare to attack? Of course, Thraxiel shouted. All ships, form attack pattern Delta. Prepare to destroy these fools. On his screen, he watched his ships move into their battle formation. It was a pattern they had used to destroy hundreds of worlds. The ships spread out in a wide line, each one targeting different parts of the enemy fleet. But something was wrong. The human ships were moving too. They weren't running away like most species did when they saw hegemony forces. Instead, They were moving into position with perfect timing. Every ship knew exactly where to go. "How are they coordinating so well?" asked his tactical officer. 10 seconds, Commander Minyoung announced on the screen. Then she said something that made Thraxiel's blood turn to ice. "Admiral Kethmura sends his regards." "How do you know that name?" Thraxiel whispered. The human woman smiled sadly. "We know many things, Commander. We know your attack patterns. We know your ship designs. We know your weapon systems. We've been studying you for a very long time." "That's impossible," Thraxiel said. "We've never met humans before." "Time's up," Minyoung said simply. The attack came from everywhere at once, but it wasn't what Thraxiel expected. There were no bright energy beams, no explosions, no missiles flying through space. Instead, something invisible hit his ships. His sensors couldn't detect what it was, but the effects were immediate. One by one, his warships went dark. Their engines stopped working. Their weapons powered down. Their lights turned off. "What's happening?" Thraxiel screamed at his crew. "I don't know, sir," his engineer replied. "Something is affecting our power systems. Our shields aren't stopping it. Can we fight back?" "No, sir. All weapon systems are offline." On the main screen, Commander Minyoung was still there, watching calmly. "Your crews are safe, Commander. We've only disabled your ships, not destroyed." Then Thraxiel looked around his bridge. Emergency lights were the only thing working. His proud warship was floating helplessly in space like a broken toy. "How?" he asked. "We understand technology differently than you do," Minyoung explained. "You build weapons to destroy. We build tools to protect and preserve." Through his small porthole windows, Thraxiel could see his other ships. All of them were dark and powerless. The human ships moved around them like shepherds watching over sheep. "This is Commander Thraxiel to Admiral Kethmura," he spoke into his emergency communicator. "The humans... They're real. They're here, and they know everything about us." He paused, watching as the human ships began moving his disabled fleet toward the third planet. "Admiral," he continued, "don't come here. It's a trap. They've been waiting for us." Commander Minyoung's voice came through his ship's speakers. "Your Admiral is already on his way, Commander. We detected his fleet leaving hyperspace an hour ago. He'll be here soon." Thraxiel slumped in his chair. The humans had been watching everything. They knew the hegemony's plans before the hegemony made them. "What do you want from us?" he asked. "Nothing," Minyoung replied. "We want you to understand something. You came here to conquer us, but we invited you here to meet us. There's a difference." As his ship was pulled toward the blue planet, Thraxiel realized that everything had changed. The humans weren't just real. They were ready. Admiral Kethmura's massive war fleet dropped out of hyperspace like angry metal gods. 5,000 ships of every size filled the darkness around the Sol system. The Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, expecting to see his scout ships and maybe some primitive human defenses. What he saw instead made him step backward in shock. The blue planet Earth was not alone. Huge structures surrounded it, like metal moons. Some were bigger than the largest hegemony space stations. They spun slowly, their surfaces covered in lights and docking bays. Between them, massive construction yards built ships that were longer than city blocks. "This can't be real," Kethmura whispered. His 6 arms trembled as he pointed at the main screen. Science Officer Kelvin was staring at his instruments with wide eyes. "Sir, my sensors are going crazy. There are thousands of energy signatures out there. These structures, some of them, are older than our empire. Older. That's impossible. Sir, and there's something else. My instruments show that we've been watched since the moment we arrived. Every move we've made, every command we've given, they've been tracking all of it." Kethmura felt cold fear creep up his spine. "Show me our scout fleet." On the screen, he could see Commander Thraxiel's ships. They were floating near the planet, dark and powerless. But they weren't destroyed. They looked, captured. A communication signal came through the speakers. The face that appeared on screen was human, but different from the female commander, who had spoken to Thraxiel. This was an older male with gray hair and eyes that seemed to look right through Kethmera. Admiral, Kechimora? The human said. His voice was calm, but strong. I am Admiral Donghayan of the Solar Defense Fleet. Kethmera stepped forward, trying to show he wasn't afraid. Human, you will release my ships and surrender immediately. Admiral Donghayan continued as if Kethmera hadn't spoken. Your reputation is well known to us. 17 star systems conquered, 43 different species, either enslaved or made extinct. The Admiral's 4 eyes went wide. How do you know about my military record? We know because we've been preparing for you for 300 years, Admiral Donghayan replied. Every species you've encountered has told us about your methods. Every battle you've fought has been studied. Every tactic you've used has been recorded and analyzed. Around the human Admiral, Kethmera could see other beings working at control stations. Some looked human, but others were clearly from different species. Species that the hegemony had supposedly destroyed decades ago. That's impossible, Kethmera said. Those species are extinct. We wiped them out ourselves. No, Admiral Donghayan said simply. You didn't. On Kethmera's tactical display, something impossible was happening. Human ships were appearing from everywhere. They came from behind asteroids, from inside gas clouds, from what looked like empty space. Thousands and thousands of ships. Sir, called his tactical officer, I count over 10,000 enemy vessels. They're surrounding us. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how the human ships moved. They didn't wait for orders like normal fleets. They moved together like they were all controlled by one mind. When Kethmera's ships tried to form attack patterns, the humans were already moving to counter them before his commanders even gave the orders. How are they doing that? He demanded. Science Officer Kelvin looked up from his instruments. Sir, they're not just reacting to our movements. They're predicting them. Somehow, they know what we're going to do before we do it. On the communication screen, Admiral Donghayan was watching with patient eyes. Admiral, you've spent centuries asking if humans are real. Today, you'll learn why we remained hidden for so long. Why? Kethmera asked, though he was afraid of the answer. Because we hoped we would never need to reveal ourselves. We hoped that someday, species like yours would learn to live in peace with others. The human ships began moving into attack formation, but their formation was unlike anything Kethmera had ever seen. It was perfect. Every ship knew exactly where to go. Every movement was calculated to support every other movement. Impossible, Kethmera breathed. You keep saying that word, Admiral Donghayan observed, but you're about to learn that many things you thought were impossible are actually quite real. Kethmera looked at his tactical display again. His fleet was completely surrounded. Every escape route was blocked. Every possible attack angle was covered. The humans had positioned their ships like pieces on a game board, and somehow they had already won the game before it started. How long have you been planning this? He asked. Since the first species came to us for help, Admiral Donghayan replied. Since the first refugees from your empire arrived at our borders, asking for sanctuary. The battle began without warning. But it wasn't really a battle. It was like watching a master artist paint a picture. Every human ship movement was part of a larger pattern. Every attack was perfectly timed with every other attack. Admiral Kethmera realized with growing horror that humans didn't just fight wars. They conducted them like deadly music, where every note was planned and every rhythm was calculated to create something beautiful and terrible. His mighty fleet, which had conquered half the galaxy, was being taken apart, piece by beings who had been watching and learning and waiting for 300 years. The battle had been going on for 6 long hours. Admiral Kethmera watched from his command. bridge, as his mighty fleet was being taken apart, ship by ship. But something strange was happening. His vessels weren't exploding in bright flames like usual space battles. Instead, they were just ... stopping. "What's happening to our ships?" he demanded from his crew. "Sir," called out his weapons officer, "the humans aren't destroying us. They're shutting down our engines and weapons with some kind of energy beam. Our crews are alive, but the ships can't fight anymore." Kethmara had never seen warfare like this. In 300 years of conquest, enemies either fought back with everything they had or surrendered quickly. But these humans were doing something different. They were winning without killing. Communications. Officer Zalquin suddenly looked up from his station with confusion on his face. "Sir, I'm getting transmission signals from this. Can't be right." "What is it?" Kethmara snapped. "Sir, I'm receiving calls from species that we destroyed years ago. The computer says they're extinct, but they're talking to us right now. Put it on the main screen." The display filled with dozens of faces. Kethmara's blood went cold as he recognized them one by one. There was a Valtheri, with their blue skin and silver eyes. A being from New Kepler, with crystal growths on their forehead. One of the singing crystals that made music instead of speech. All species that the hegemony had wiped out decades ago. All very much alive. Standing in front of them was a human female, with short black hair and a confident smile. She wore the same blue uniform as the other human commanders. "Greetings, Admiral Kethmara," she said. "I am Captain Sujin. I believe you remember some of my friends here." She gestured to the beings behind her. "The Velthari Confederation, which you destroyed 20 years ago. The orbital cities of New Kepler, which you conquered 15 years ago. The singing crystals of Resonance Prime, which you silenced 12 years ago." Kethmara's 6 arms began shaking. "That's impossible. We have records. We destroyed their home worlds. We scattered their fleets. They're extinct." Captain Sujin shook her head. "No, Admiral. You destroyed empty planets and fought clone fleets. The real populations were already safe in human space." General Vexta, who was standing beside Kethmara, gasped loudly. "The missing colonies. The ghost fleets that disappeared instead of fighting. ... Exactly," Sujin confirmed. "Every species you've encountered over the past 3 centuries was given the same choice when you arrived at their worlds. They could fight you and die, or they could trust us and disappear." On the screen, a Veltheri stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was like singing wind. "We chose life, Admiral. We chose to wait and prepare rather than die for nothing." Another being, this one from New Kepler, added, "You conquered our empty cities, while our children grew up safe among the humans. You celebrated victory over ghosts." Kethmara felt the deck shake under his feet. More ships were appearing around his fleet. But these weren't just human vessels. He could see the organic curves of Velthari bioships, the crystal formations of New Kepler riders, the sound-based propulsion of Resonance Prime singers. "How many?" he whispered. 50 species, Admiral," Captain Sujin answered. 50 civilizations that you thought you had destroyed. All of them alive. All of them angry. All of them ready to take back what you stole." Science Officer Kelvin was staring at his instruments with terror. "Sir, there are thousands of new contacts. Ships I've never seen before. Technologies our databases don't recognize." Captain Sujin continued speaking. "You see, Admiral, humans learned something very important from studying galactic history. Empires like yours never stop growing. They never stop conquering. They never stop destroying until someone makes them stop." The truth hit Kethmara like a physical blow. This was never about defending Earth. "No," Sujin agreed. "This was about liberating the galaxy. We've been planning this for 300 years. Every species you conquered gave us more information about your methods. Every world you destroyed made us more determined to stop you. Around his fleet, the combined armada of supposedly extinct species moved into position. Kethmura realized that his empire hadn't been growing stronger over the centuries. It had been walking into a trap that got bigger every time they conquered someone new. Every battle you fought, Sujin explained, every tactic you used, every weakness you showed, it was all reported back to us by the survivors you never knew existed. General Vextar slumped into his chair. We weren't conquering the galaxy, we were being studied, like insects under a microscope, confirmed one of the new Kepler representatives. Captain Sujin's expression grew serious. Admiral Kasmora, I'm going to offer you the same choice we offered everyone else. Surrender now, and your crews will be treated according to galactic law. Your people will be given a chance to learn how to live in peace with others. She paused and looked directly at him through the screen. Or continue fighting and face the combined anger of 50 species who have been waiting decades for justice. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Kethmura understood what it felt like to be afraid. The mighty hegemony wasn't facing just humans. They were facing everyone they had ever wronged, returned from the dead and ready for revenge. The legends had teeth, and they were very, very sharp. Admiral Kethmura sat on a simple metal chair in a room with white walls. The room was clean and bright, nothing like the dark prison cells on hegemony ships. Through the clear wall, he could see his officers in other rooms. They were eating real food, not prison rations. Some were even playing games on small devices the humans had given them. The door opened and a human walked in. He was young with black hair and carried 2 steaming cups in his hands. The smell that came from the cups was strange, but not unpleasant. Good morning, Admiral, the human said. I am Commander Jamin. I brought you coffee. It's a human drink. Kethmura took the cup carefully. The liquid inside was dark brown and warm. He tasted it slowly. It was bitter, but somehow comforting. Your fleet surrendered 6 hours ago, Commander Jamin said, as he sat down across from the Admiral. I thought, you should know that we had very few deaths on either side. Kethmura looked up from his coffee. Why didn't you destroy us? You had the power. I saw your ships. Jamin leaned back in his chair. Because destroying things was never what we wanted to do, Admiral. We wanted to free people. The human touched something on the table, and a picture appeared in the air above them. It showed the whole galaxy as a map of lights. Some areas were colored red, others green, and some were turning from red to green, as Kethmura watched. What am I looking at? The Admiral asked. The red areas are hegemony space, Jim explained. The green areas are free systems, and those areas that are changing color, that's happening right now. Kethmura stared at the map. He could see the red zones getting smaller every second. What's happening? The real invasion began the moment you entered our solar system, Jamin said. Remember all those species you thought you had destroyed? They're taking back their home worlds right now. On the map, Kethmura could see small dots moving from green areas toward red areas. Thousands of them. Every enslaved population, on every world you control is being liberated by combined fleets, Jamin continued. The Valtheri are reclaiming their crystal cities. The people of New Kepler are rebuilding their orbital farms. The singing crystals are returning to Resonance Prime. Admiral Kethmura felt sick to his stomach. How long will it take? 72 hours, Jamin replied calmly. In 3 days, the hegemony will no longer exist. The Admiral put down his coffee cup. His 6 hands were shaking. What will happen to my people? Will you destroy our home worlds? No, Jamin said. Your people will be offered the same choice we gave everyone else. They can join the galactic community as equals, learning to live in peace with other species. Or they can choose isolation on their own worlds. Kethmura looked at the map again, and if they choose isolation, then they'll be left alone, as long as they don't try to hurt anyone else. But Admiral, Most species choose friendship once they learn there's another way to live. The human stood up and walked to the clear wall. Outside, Kethmura could see a massive fleet of ships moving through space. But these ships weren't built for war. They carried construction equipment, medical supplies, and food. What do humans gain from all this? Kethmura asked. Why did you hide for 300 years just to help other species? Jamin turned back to face him. His expression was sad but hopeful. Peace, Admiral. We hid because we hoped we would never need to fight. We hoped that maybe, someday, the galaxy would learn to live without empires like yours. The Admiral was quiet for a long time. He thought about all the worlds he had conquered, all the species he had destroyed, or thought he had destroyed. We could have ruled the galaxy together, he said finally. Rule? Jamin shook his head. Admiral, that's the difference between us. You wanted to rule. We want to help others be free. Through the wall, Kethmura watched his officers talking with human guards. The guards weren't treating them like prisoners. They were treating them like guests who had made mistakes. I don't understand humans, he admitted. Most species don't, at first, Jamin said, but they learn. We're not perfect, Admiral. We make mistakes too, but we try to fix them instead of making them worse. Kethmura looked at the galactic map one more time. The red areas were almost gone now. Centuries of hegemony conquest were being undone in hours. What happens to me? He asked. Commander Jamin sat back down. That depends on you, Admiral. Are you willing to help us build something better? Are you willing to help your own people learn a new way to live? Outside the window, the great fleet continued moving toward hegemony space, but these ships carried teachers, not weapons. They carried hope, not fear. Admiral Kethmura finally understood why humans had remained a myth for so long. It wasn't because they were weak or afraid. It was because they had mercy. They had waited and planned and hoped for a better solution until the very last moment. The myth had become reality, but it wasn't the reality anyone had expected. The humans hadn't come to conquer the galaxy. They had come to set it free, and, for the first time in his life, Admiral Kethmura wondered what freedom might feel like.